leadership of Dr. Struckhold, 34 scientists accepted contracts from Project Paperclip and were moved to Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. These personalities began to work on human radiation studies, aviation medicine, microwave technology, and MK-Ultra mind control experiments. The authorization to hire these Nazi scientists came directly from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The top military brass stated that they wished to exploit these rare minds. Operation Paperclip eventually recruited 9,000 Nazi scientists and technicians to help the U.S. destroy the USSR. Some of these scientists were known as programmers, people skilled in the art of breaking down and controlling the human mind. Dr. Joseph Mengele and others experimented extensively with children and adults using mescaline, electroshock therapy, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, torture, rape, starvation, and trauma bonding in an effort to control the human mind. Dr. Mengele was so successful using the technique of trauma bonding that survivors today still exhibit a profound affection for their torturer, referring to Mengele as Beautiful Joseph. Dr. L. Wilson Green was a Jewish doctor who the Nazis coerced to participate in their experiments at Auschwitz. This individual, whose code name was Dr. Green, came to the U.S. after World War II and began to experiment on adults and children for the military and CIA. The military and CIA copied the Nazi methodology and began numerous programs of their own. The first CIA program was known as MK-Ultra. The MK is an abbreviation for the German words for mind control. By 1953, the CIA, U.S. Navy, and U.S. Army Chemical Corps were conducting their own narco-hypnosis programs on prisoners, mental patients, foreigners, ethnic minorities, and those classified as sexual deviants. To avoid confusion, the dozens of mind control operations will be referred to generically as MK-Ultra. According to MK-Ultra documents and sources, the methodology of mind control works best when severe trauma is administered by the age of 3 years old. Severe trauma, such as rape, applied at the age of 3, will cause the personality to split or dissociate in an attempt to shield the mind from memories of events too painful to endure. The psychiatric terms are multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder and can be produced accidentally or purposefully. The Three Faces of Eve is the true story of multiple personality disorder created by childhood abuse. Psychic trauma and creation of multiple personalities was eventually codified by programmers into a standard methodology and is typically accomplished by forcing children to observe and participate in the ritual sacrifice of animals and humans, and inducing further psychic trauma by the means of rape and other horrors. The trauma causes the dissociation, is used as an opening to hypnotically induce an alternate shell personality. The programmer will use hypnosis and triggers to call forth the created personality, known as an alter personality. Only 20% of the general population is easily hypnotizable, but trauma at an early age makes people vulnerable to dissociation and thus easily hypnotizable. Typically, the programmer might wear a costume, such as a rabbit suit, and sacrifice a rabbit in front of the child victims before they are physically traumatized. The image of the rabbit, a phrase from Alice in Wonderland, or similar paired images are used as the triggers to call forth the alter personality. The method works best when the trauma is repeated around 6 years of age. A few years later, the child victim's IQ tests and personality tests are evaluated to determine whether the child may be trained in assassination, sexual blackmail, drug courier, or other role. The subject can be hypnotized and used for operations, but would only be consciously aware of the sense of lost time. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb employed these early programmers and concentrated on the use of LSD for mind control and exotic poisons and drugs for political assassinations. He personally gave LSD to an unknowing fellow scientist, Dr. Frank Olson, who worked for the Army Chemical Corps Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick. His job was developing biological weapons. Dr. Olson committed suicide by jumping through the window of a 10th floor hotel. Dr. Gottlieb concealed his actions, and the Olson family was unaware of the cause of his suicide until 27 years later, when the facts emerged during a congressional hearing on CIA abuses. The link between Gottlieb and Olson illustrates how the different elements of biological and chemical weapons, radiation testing, and MKUltra were all intertwined. Project Pandora. In 1953, the Russians began to bombard the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with electromagnetic radiation in the microwave spectrum, but the fact was kept secret from the embassy employees. U.S. Ambassador Stossel contracted a blood disease, bleeding eyes, nausea, and eventually lymphoma. He and other employees eventually died as a result of the microwave attacks. Dr. Henry Kissinger sent a secret memo giving hazard pay to embassy personnel in the 1970s. Before the attacks, the USSR had met with the U.S. to try to head off an arms race in electromagnetic weapons, but were refused. In retaliation, they began microwaving the U.S. Embassy. It is possible that the U.S. government took advantage of the situation and used the embassy staff as microwave guinea pigs. The Department of Defense's Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, set up a lab at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research and participated in Project Pandora. Scientists began zapping monkeys to study the biological effects of highly concentrated microwave frequencies. Similar studies were conducted at the VA Hospital in Kansas City, University of Rochester, Brooks Air Force Base, Johns Hopkins, MIT, the MITRE Corporation, University of Pennsylvania, and other domestic and foreign labs. In one study, Dr. Jose Delgado experimented on 4 human subjects using radio waves, reporting they experienced different emotions, sensations, and colored visions. Delgado stated that these weapons were, quote, more dangerous than atomic destruction. With knowledge of the brain, he said, we may transform, we may shape, direct, roboticize man. I think the great danger of the future is that we will have roboticized human beings who are not aware that they have been roboticized, unquote. Dr. Delgado was in fact responsible for the development of a brain transponder that was used to roboticize human subjects.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Get off my mother! That's being really mean to my mommy.
What's he doing?
He's hitting my mom and he's hitting her to the ground.
How old are you?
12.
So he's physically hurting your mom?
He's hitting her to my bed and he's making marks on my mom.
Thank God.
Fighting about?
Everything! Get off my mother!
Who's at the house with you guys?
It's my sister, my dad, my mom. My dad's hitting my mom. He's just hiding out.
Okay, Okay, they're coming. Okay, how old's your sister?
9.
Do you know if anybody's been drinking?
My dad has. They're fighting really bad.
And then
You're leaving?
Yes. Oh my God!
What's going on?
Daddy!
Can you tell me what happened, honey?
My dad hit my mom and he pushed her into a flower pot. Oh my God, he's hurting me! He's hurting me now!
Did you go?
Your glasses!
You need to go away from them, okay? You need to take your sister.
My mom broke her arm!
Your mother has broke her arm?
Please hurry! My dad broke my mom's arm! Get away from me! No! They're coming for you! They're all coming for you! The police and everything! You're harassing her! Are you coming soon?
Yes, honey, they're coming, okay? They're on their way.
Oh, I pushed her! He pushed her really hard! And she fell again! And we're all outside!
the operator
Really hurt her arm! Dad! Get off me! Get off my mommy! Are you guys doing here? It's really bad!
He's never done this before?
Well, they've been fighting for a long time, but he's never took it this far. We're trying to get in the car, but he won't let her. Ow! Ow! It's really mean. We're probably in the car right now. He's not letting us go. He's holding on. My car. We're pulling out of our driveway right now. Go fast, Mommy, go fast. Oh my God, he's dead. He's dead. He's really dead.
What happened?
He was hanging onto the car and he fell off and
Did she run over him with the car?
my father's dead. Please come help. My father's dead.
Did she run over him with the car?
Not on purpose. He was holding onto the window and he fell right off and he's bleeding really bad. I don't want to live here anymore.
But today, we know better. This school, like so many residential schools, was a place of horror.
We were down playing and this tall guy, real tall guy, called me out to the hall. He guided me downstairs, just told me to come with him, and I did, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I went down into the furnace room with him where the laundry gets done, and there's a big furnace downstairs. And there's a flat bed down there where they fold laundry, I guess. That's where he laid me. I was 6 years old.
Sexual abuse was common at the school.
It happened lots. Brothers, priests, and I don't know who the other guys were. But it always happened downstairs. I was just so afraid, so scared. I'm scared to speak up. I'm scared to. Because every time I spoke up, I'd be told to shut up. There's a lot of damage in me. I couldn't even love my kids. I couldn't even love my grandchildren. And I have 2 great-grandchildren. I don't know how to love them.
And good people, we didn't feel good about ourselves. And this is, like generations of brainwashing. I mean, they taught that to Graham, they taught that to Mum, they taught that to me. And kids that haven't gone to the residential school even suffer from that, because, it's taught to them.
I know why we're stuck here on reserve. It's because it was beaten out of us in a residential school. Our will to succeed because we were told we were nothing.
Ralph Phillips, what is it that they did to you there that makes you so angry?
When I was a kid, I was happy. I was like that little guy. I was free. And they took that away. And these are some of the things that white people can't understand.
I don't think that...
What about you as a parent?
I don't know nothing. I'm 50 years old and I'm just as bad as my kids.
Ralph Phillips blames that on the school. His mother went there. He went there. Today, he's a recovering alcoholic who's only starting to deal with the pain he remembers.
Did you know what love was as a child?
Right up to 1980, I didn't know. I thought going to bed with a woman, I thought that was love. I didn't know what my grandmother knew, what my mother never knew, what I didn't know. 40 years old.
Some Indians, though, aren't concerned about liability. Ralph Phillips would settle for a simple apology.
I think that would be the only payment when the government can come up and say, okay, we're sorry. We recognize what has happened. You look at it, like the Japanese, look how much they give them for what they did during the war. And like that wasn't for a very long period in there. God damn it, they've been doing it to us for 300 years.
Has often had to be mom, when her own mom just couldn't be.
She had me when she was only 15. Makes me sad to think of how I came to be.
How you came to be?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
My mom always tells me that my dad raped her. Yeah, on pastry. One time.
It's okay.
I got beaten up by my mom. Sylvia was there too.
What happened?
I don't know, she was just drunk.
How did you feel about that?
I don't know. I didn't even come out of my room all day that day. I just stayed in my room. And just blocked myself in here. I'm already feeling still. I need to sleep.
When I get mad, that takes my feelings away.
Yeah, me too. That's probably the only way that could calm me down.
And if you didn't smoke, what do you think?
No, probably just be pissed off all the time.
You want to go again? I want to go again. Okay, let's go again. Here.
How long have you been smoking?
Since I was 11.
Since you were 11?
Yeah,
And how often do you smoke?
every day.
I would like to share with you here that Anne had a daughter, and she had a daughter at the age of 15. And her daughter today is a prosecutor, a Crown prosecutor. 3 kids, happy, giving back to her community. A couple of years ago, the last I heard was she had built a skating rink, a full-size skating rink for the kids at a reserve. She went through the fire, and now she's a voice for her people. It's a choice. It's personal. Reconciling to yourself So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go real quickly here, a few more testimonies, because again, I'll be talking about MK Ultra, and I'm going to ask you to just hear what I have to say. But there was a reason for me to be here today. I'm sorry, I've been really emotional on this walk. When I had my visitation, when I Am came to me, and I asked for the father of my girls to be a Native man, many years later, I had my girls by a Native man. And what I'm looking at today and what I'm going to be talking about here, I had this overwhelming revelation that it was much more than what I had asked for. Because if you remember the dream I had at the age of 12 about the two women and the baby boy, who ended up being my stepson, the child that was added to the 3 that I asked for. This was telling me that everything that I had asked for that night of my visitation was already put in place and done. After everything that I have asked for and was established, I Am put me down. And he gave me the memory of the age of 12 when I had the dream of this little boy who ended up being my stepson. So I don't think it's a mistake, Tamara, that you're sitting at my table. Thank you, Jesus. I also want to say one more thing about this, is that I remember one day I was driving to my girlfriend's. She's passed away now. I'm driving, and I remember talking to Jesus as I'm driving. I must have been really upset that day, triggered. And I remember crying on my way to my girlfriend's, and I said, Jesus, how can this be? I feel like I'm a 7-year-old kid raising a family. I felt like I was just 7 years old. was really scary. Okay, so now I've got two things going. I'm looking into the residential schools and the testimonies, because in 2015, what happened here, it was called Truth. It's called Truth and Reconciliation. And this was through the natives and the government trying to come together. And I'm going to talk more about that a little later. Okay, so I'm putting all of these testimonies together. And I come across this here. Monkey daycare. Growing up a child's research subject. Aaron Mitchell Dean, May 20th, 2015. As a toddler in 1981 and 1982, I attended a daycare with monkeys, or perhaps more precisely, I was a part of a study in the form of a daycare that involved monkeys. I was 2, then 3. I remember nothing. I know about it because my dad liked to tease me about it. If I made a mess at dinner, came in with a dirty knees or elbow, or was otherwise sloppy, he'd say it was the monkeys. The idea that I had once played with the primates, actually sometimes I could swear he said chimps, became a part of my mental frame of reference, my picture of myself. This, even though, as I said, I don't remember them. I don't even remember the other children in the program. Well, this again gave me the memory of one day I was 11, 12 years old, and I asked my mom one day, I said, why am I having a repeated dream of bunk beds and a song, Frère Jacques, Dormez-vous? Where is this coming from? And that's when she looked at me and she said, okay, we got to talk. It's time. So she goes on to tell me that my father had taken my brother Jimmy and myself. David was just a newborn at the time, and he had taken us, I believe, to BC. I think it was BC. And he drops us off at the Children's Aid. My mother tells me that they told my father that if he stopped seeing us, that he had to come and visit us at least once a week, or we would be in the custody of the Children's Aid if he did not do this. Well, he never came back. And he told somebody that knew my mother. She tracked my mother down, told my mother where we were. My mother fought for us, got a lawyer. We were there for a little under a year. So when my mother came to pick us up, we were at some house, you know. It wasn't a building, it was a house. And my mother said that my brother was in the chair and I was standing there, and as she went closer to my brother, I stood in front of her and I wouldn't let her touch him. And this went on for years. So then I got sick. I don't know if it was a few years later or a year later, I'm not sure, but I got really sick. The ambulance, nobody wanted to come and pick us up. Nobody wanted, I believe they closed half the hospital. I was quarantined for a few months. And when my mother came to get me, I didn't know who she was. And there's more to that, and I will get back into that in part 3 of the dream. But this was a memory that I have put together with my father. And there's more to that, but monkey daycare. My brother Jimmy was in diapers, so I don't think it was a coincidence that I came across this story. And there's a story of a little boy. His name is Albert B., and he's being conditioned to fear animals. This is the young girl that played with the primates. So you can look into this if you'd like, but yeah. Okay, so now I'm going into the history and looking in and asking some questions about how far back this went with the First Nation and the schools. And so this is the information that was coming to me here. So I'm just going to read this out. Again, this is the hand of the German, right? Okay, so Lieutenant General Lothar von Trotha, Supreme Commander of German. Trotha was determined to quickly and completely exterminate the African natives. Trotha's troops surrounded the Africans on three sides. When Trotha wrote on October 2nd, 1904, "It is my intention to destroy the rebellious tribe with streams of blood and money." His men used this German name I cannot pronounce, which means extermination. I, the great general of German soldiers, sent this letter to the heroes. The heroes are German subjects no longer. The hero nation must now leave the country. If it refuses, I shall compel it to do so with the long tube cannon. Any hero found inside the German frontier with or without a gun or cattle will be executed. I shall spare neither women nor children. I shall give the order to drive them away and fire on them. Such are my words to the hero people. Understandably, Trotha's command became known in official circles as the extermination order. German authorities under General Lothar von Trotha unleashed a brutal retaliation fueled by racial ideology and including mass killings, forced labor, and concentration camps. The massacre is widely recognized as an internal extermination attempt. By the time all the camps were shut in 1908, after 80% of the heroes and about half of the Nema population had died. Near the coastal town of Luderitz, Shark Island became synonymous with the atrocities. It was modified into a peninsula in 1906 and used as a prison where inmates were subject to starvation, rape, forced labor, and beatings. Unsanitary conditions caused death from otherwise preventable diseases, especially effectively turning Shark Island into an extermination camp. The island would provide a blueprint for the Nazi Germany's concentration camps during the Holocaust.
Significantly, this double standard of what constituted education for Indians extended to all areas of life in the residential schools. Two separate standards of health and medical care existed in these facilities, as evident in letters from school doctors like Dr. Edward Pitts, who stated in 1934 that he was compelled to apply a different standard of care to Indian children than he would to white children. In other words, if he was to apply the same standard of healthcare to Indians, he wrote, he would be forced to recommend the immediate closure of every Indian school. According to statements of leading jurists at the Nuremberg tribunals, such a systemic double standard of care is one of the strongest indicators of a general plan to exterminate a group of people over time. In the case of Canadian Indian residential schools, statements like those of Dr. Pitts and senior civil servants reveal that the massive dying off of Indian children was perceived and treated as normal and acceptable by government and church leaders. The attitude of rationalizing and allowing genocidal death rates in the residential schools was even stated explicitly by the highest government official responsible for Indian affairs, Duncan Campbell Scott, who in 1909 commented that, quote, "We must accept that in the course of our work, enormous numbers of Indian children will in fact die from tuberculosis. This cannot be avoided." The intentional nature of this genocidal purpose is evident on a broader scale by comparing the federal laws brought in during the same period that Indian schools were established by a secret order in council. The intentional nature of this genocidal purpose is evident on a broader scale by comparing the federal laws brought in during the same period that Indian schools were established by a secret order in council. As early as 1909, government medical officers like Dr. Peter Bryce of Ontario documented that over half the children were routinely dying in church-run residential schools from what Bryce called, quote, "diseases that are deliberately introduced by church staff," unquote. The practice of housing the sick with the healthy that caused so many deaths continued throughout the history of the Indian residential schools, as eyewitnesses described. Video exhibits numbers 10, 11, and 12 are statements by Del Riley, incarcerated at the Mohawk Institute Anglican School in the 1950s, Del Marjani, an inmate at Cooper Island Catholic School during the 1950s, Virginia Baptiste of the St. Eugene School in the 1960s, and William Coombs interned at St. Mary's Catholic School in the mid-1960s. All of them, at opposite ends of Canada, were made to sleep or play with children sick with tuberculosis.
My name is Del Riley. I'm a member of the Chippewa of the Thames, and I spent 5 years in the Canadian government calls it residential schools, but really these were prisoner of war camps. I was in the one called the Mohawk Institute. When I originally came in, I had just gotten out of a sanatorium. Both my sister and I, we were admitted into here, and I just read her intake admission slip there. It said she had TB. Well, I must have had it. I had the same as she had because we were in the sanatorium together. My mother died there, and then they brought us here. So I don't know if we were used to infect people or not. I wouldn't know.
But you had tuberculosis when they admitted you to the mush hole, the residential school?
I couldn't guarantee that 100%, but I would have to say yes. Because nobody was there to examine, but this was common practice at these residential schools where they brought in kids that were diseased. There was no filtration system within the school to properly circulate air or anything. So if one kid got sick, they all got sick.
Yeah. In the same room with people who had TB, they didn't separate us.
And we were forced to play with them. Their nuns made us play with those kids. We didn't want to get sick either, but they were forcing us to play with those kids. And also, they made some of them sleep with the other kids.
Many children that weren't cooperative, like myself, wasn't cooperative, and they were put into with the children who were sick with at the end of the dormitory. They kept the sickies there, the ones who were sick with tuberculosis, and they put me and my brother Ernie in with the ones who were sick because we wouldn't comply.
In July of 2008, Irene Fable described on national Canadian television how in the year 1944 she witnessed the incineration in a furnace of a newborn Indian baby by a Catholic priest at the Moskowaugan Catholic Residential School in the province of Saskatchewan, as is exhibited in number 25.
Irene Favel, I'm 75. I went to residential school in Muskogee in 1941 to 1949. And I had a very, very rough life. I was mistreated in every way. As a young girl, she was 7-year-old. She was pregnant. And what they did, she had her baby. They took the baby, wrapped it up in a nice pink outfit, took it downstairs. I was in the kitchen with the nun for cooking supper. They took the baby into the, where they make a fire and all that to heat up the school furnace room. They threw that little baby in there and burnt it alive. All you could hear was, that was it. And you could smell the flesh cooking.
Now, this practice of incinerating children's bodies happened not only in Catholic Indian residential schools in Saskatchewan, but in Alberta and British Columbia as well, as eyewitnesses Lillian Shirt and William Coombs describe in exhibits 25A and 25B.
What happened?
It was scary. Finding those little skulls in there. What were those little skulls? Where did they come from?
Could you describe what they looked like?
Tiny little ones. 2 little skulls. Tiny baby ones.
And they're in here.
I feel that fear we had running upstairs through that door.
Furnace burning 24/7, which was totally out of bounds, and me and a friend witnessed the sisters or brothers taken looked like little bodies under white wrappings or white cloth, and put them into the furnace.
Bill Seward told an audience in Vancouver in June 1998 how his sister Maggie died at the Catholic school at Cooper Island after being pushed out a window by a nun, in Exhibit 26.
Her name was Maggie. She was 2 years older than me. And she was murdered in there by a nun. She pushed out the window. Second story up, and she died. But nothing was done about it. We weren't allowed to see a lawyer or nothing. They just covered this up.
Sylvester Green and Doug Wilson, both former students at the United Church Indian School in Edmonton, described their participation in burial details at the school, where they helped to bury other Indian children. Video exhibits 28 and 29.
And I remember we used to go dig graves there. And they would be kids that came from Charles Camsell Indian Hospital. How they died, I don't know. But I know we just dug a lot of graves.
There was a lot of Eskimo babies buried in that burial ground, which was behind the principal's house. Just on the other side of the staff garden. There was 4 of us that dug the grave. Myself, my brother Larry, Mel Patsy, and Albert Card.
And Ricky LaValle, who was held at the Catholic Indian School in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, describes the gruesome torture and murder of his younger brother, who was 5 years old, at the hands of a Catholic priest. Exhibit 30.
My brother died because of a cattle prod, of a shock of the cattle prod. When he was 4 years old, they dragged him by the hair and they cut his skin right off his head. The pastors did that with a whip, like a horse whip. It was sharp, with these little blades on it. The pastors did that with a whip, like a horse whip. It was sharp, with these little blades on it. And when I was in there, I heard him scream for help. And right away, there was a lot of blood on the floor. And they wouldn't take him to a hospital or the nurse or nothing. What happened then? What happened when I was in there? I heard him still scream for help. Rick, help! They tortured me. I'm gonna die. so he died right away, like that. He was my only best friend and my only brother that I always loved.
Office will present evidence of these individual acts of violence, such as the operation of an electric chair for torturing children at the Catholic St. Anne's Residential School in Fort Albany, Ontario, during the 1960s, Exhibit 52. Both Marianne Nakagi Davis and Edmund Matata-Wabin were victims of the Fort Albany electric chair at the ages of 8 and 6 years old. Survivors at the United Church Alberni Residential School, like Harry Wilson, describe a similar electric chair in the use in the school basement. Lorna McNaughton was also subjected to electric shocks at the Anglican Mohawk Institute in Brantford. Video Exhibit 53.
So it must have been about 39, 40. And from that time till the minister left, Mr. Snell left, we used to have shock treatments. And the senior room teacher, Mr. Yendel, used to put this little girl's hand on a plate or on something, and she'd get a shock. We'd all join hands. And she'd get a shock, and then it would pass from girl to girl, all the way around the room. And we did that probably every 2 weeks, around maybe twice a month. It was quite often anyway.
Virginia Baptiste tells of the use of electric shocks on her younger brother at the Catholic St. Eugene Residential School in Cranbrook, British Columbia. Exhibit 54.
He used it on my brother's penis. He electrocuted his penis there till my brother passed out. And he was laughing, brother. My brother said he was laughing while he was doing it. And we'd like to see him in pain.
At the Nanaimo Indian Hospital on Vancouver Island, Exhibit 55.
He had put needles in my head and had hooked them up electrically and would zap me. At that time, my arms were put in a chair and locked in so I couldn't move. And my head was put on a brace in the back so I was like this, I couldn't move. And I can't tell you how long they had done it. All I remember is that I still, to this day, I still get like my brain will still have that kind of a kick from it, right?
Right.
And they had done a lot of bad things by putting medications in the food while I was in the dark room, bringing the food in, and you had to eat it, and if you didn't eat it, then if you threw it up into a bag, they put it on a plate again and make you eat.
Okay, here's a little info on the school that they are talking about, the Mohawk school here. Chapels Royal in Canada are religious establishments which have been granted a rare horrific distinction by the monarch in recognition of their unique role or place. 3 sanctuaries in Canada, all located in the province of Ontario, have been designated as Chapels Royal. All have associations with the First Nation communities and the connection between them and the Canadian Crown. Mohawk Chapel in Brantford was designated as a Chapel Royal in 1904 by King Edward VII. This was done in recognition of the historic alliance between the Mohawk people and the Crown, referred to as the Covenant Chain. In 2004, Queen Elizabeth II designated Christ Church near Deserato as a Chapel Royal. The chapel served in the church for the Mohawk territory and was designated as a Chapel Royal in recognition of the community's military service. Her Majesty Royal's Chapel of the Majesty's Royal Chapel of the Mohawks is the oldest surviving church building in Ontario and was the first Anglican church in Upper Canada. Again, I just put down there's two testimonies here. Northern Ontario abuses promoted. Okay, the Truth and the Reconciliation Report. This is two of them here. Molly Roy said that her years at the Spanish Ontario Girls' School left her struggling with a sense of abandonment. I think the thing about the school more than anything else is the feeling of abandonment. Why was I there? And why didn't you come to see me? Because all of us, with the expectation of a few, parents were like 10 miles down the road, 10 miles, and the people wouldn't even come. It's not that my parents didn't have a car. My dad worked and made good money, and there was no, you'd wait and nobody showed up. And I think that's the thing more than anything else that bothered me. It's not the school, but it's the fact that I wasn't wanted. This is by David Helwig, June 4th, 2015. Sally General, a former student who attended the Mohawk Institute from age 4 to 13, recalled having all of her hair cut off along with all of the other students. They were branded the Mush Hole Baldies. Sally also remembered being locked in a dark room with her friend and being told by the staff that the rats were going to get us. They would cry for hours, not knowing why they were being punished. It wasn't until she learned English that she realized she was being punished for not knowing or speaking English. Sally was also sexually assaulted. After one assault, she began to bleed and went to the nurse. When she told the nurse what happened, the nurse gave her a beating, told her she was lying, and that she should never say anything like this again. Male children at the Mohawk Institute were forced to get circumcision and have their tonsils removed. A lot of the testimonies that I've heard came from the Mohawk institution. And I'm going to stop here for a second because it was Jonathan Nolan that picked up on Jonathan Kleck's video, and I'm going to show it to you here. Okay, I cannot find the videos that I'm looking for, and it takes so much time that I'm getting frustrated at it. But here is some clips that I took from that video that Jonathan Kleck had put out. And he mentions and he shows this as, I think it's called the Alien Ant Farm. Now, back a while ago, he talked about the ant farm, aka a new race of beings, and he was talking about the Black Plague. And the Black Plague, again, I did a whole video on that. So he calls them the ant farm, right? And then now he's got this where there is a band, and I believe it's called the Alien Ant Farm. And I looked at this and I saw the clip with the forks as a headdress, a Mohawk headdress. And I started to ask myself, now all of a sudden this comes out while I'm working on the Mohawk institution, what they did with the children and how they tortured and killed the children and gave them shock treatments every second week. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, so what are they watching me as I'm working, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this Mohawk headdress made of forks, and he just says, well, it's just a picture of this woman and they're eating and all that stuff. I wish I had the clip. I would replay it. I would play it out for you, but I don't have it. But here, when I saw the picture of the woman, right away I thought of it's got to be Elizabeth Taylor. And so I took the picture of Elizabeth Taylor here with her mole here, and I believe that they are the same, and she represents the movie The Queen of Egypt, okay? And so here it says, forget her famous raven locks. Taylor covered it all up with a pearl-encrusted headdress for a ball in 1977. And there was something else that happened in 1977. Again, I cannot find the video. It's very frustrating right now for me. So yeah, here's the Mohawk headdress. I'm speaking about the Mohawk Institute and what they did to the children, killing the children, torturing them. Again, it all came from the Monarch experiments, along with the Angel of Death, who was Magdala, Joseph Magdala, okay, which I'll be going into. Again, I found this with Michael Jackson with the fork in his mouth like this. This, again, is related to, they're related, Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson. Now, they were very close that I know of. That's what I do know. I always thought maybe she could be the one that was his handler or whatever, but they were very close. Okay, and where else would I? Yeah, Annie. And this is right after I have come out with the testimony of my mother-in-law, Anne, who is Native, and she's Cree. She's the one that passed away. She came to me a few days before she passed in a dream. And all of a sudden, Jonathan Kleck's coming out here with the mohawk and the forks and the eating of beings. And, he's got Elizabeth Taylor here. Again, we got the crazy look, shocking the monkey. We've got the snake here, the snakeskin chair. Everything is very symbolic, absolutely. There's no question. But here you can see Jonathan Kleck. You can see that he's the one, he's playing this out. And I found again in 1977, she's got the headdress here. Again, we have the mohawk. They're all connected. Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson. And she represented Egypt. Interesting.
Across the country in Ontario, Lorna McNaughton, a survivor of the Anglican Indian School in Brantford, relates how her brother witnessed the mass killing of Mohawk children by Canadian soldiers near the Mohawk School in the year 1943. Video Exhibit 32.
Our dorm was just full of girls. And he said, yeah, so was ours full of boys. And he said, do you know what happened to them? And I said, no. And he said, they called in the army and they took them to the army base and they shot them. They threw them all along this big hole and they shot them. And when the bullets hit them, they fell into the hole. And he said, when they were all done, he said, those that hadn't fallen into the hole, some of them were still alive. He said that some of them were still alive in the hole. And he said they came along with, I want to say, a bulldozer. That's what comes to my mind, but I'm not really sure that my brother had said a bulldozer. They came along with a big machine anyway, and they shoved them all in that big hole and they covered it up. And he says, that's what happened to them. And I must have been about 8, I guess. There's 7 or 8, somewhere through there. Let's see, that must have been 43 or 44.
Okay. According to Nicholas, I believe it's Patterson, an unquestionable, brilliant radio electronics engineer who worked often in the Montauk project in an altered state of mind while simultaneously employed by Brookhaven National Labs. Such altered awareness can be achieved with various psychotronic technologies, and also according to other first-hand participants in certain of these experiments. Some of the youngest abducted and so viciously abused. Some of the youngsters abducted and so viciously abused in these activities died as a result were buried in mass on site. This is what she just described, what her brother had witnessed. Some of the youngsters abducted and so viciously abused in these activities died as a result and were buried in mass on site. The human tragedy attested to here begins to rival such indelible atrocities as the Pol Pot massacres or Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen in horror and brutality. The fact that this was done to American children on American soil by agencies connected, however tenuously, to our government is virtually unimaginable. Yet, as we have discovered, many of these assertions made by the Phoenix Montauk investigators have been checked out and verified. And the Phoenix here would be the Philadelphia experiment. Monkey, wheels keep turning. Monkey, something's burning. Monkey, don't let it, but I guess I'm learning. Shock, shock, shock. Watch the monkey get hurt. Monkey, shock, shock, shock. Watch the monkey get hurt. Monkey. This man here being forced to sit in a homemade electric chair at a school and then being given painful jolts to entertain visiting dignitaries. Pharmaceutical testing companies, the military, this is what they were, this is what she's testifying to here. Okay, so here I am going to introduce you right now to the Montauk Project, for those that really don't know much about it. The Montauk Air Force Station, active or not. Now, this is the gentleman that I was doing a little bit of my research on, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to this man, John A. Quinn, and he was the one that did the investigation here, and I've got a video that I'll put down there in the description box so that you'll get a visual of the two men that tried to or temporarily took this place down. Okay, and so here we go. So by John A. Quinn, I've conducted a 2-year investigation in allegations made by scientist Alfred Bielek and Preston Nicholas and Peter Moon, authors of the Montauk Project book series, and other people regarding the ultra-top secret experiments carried out by the clandestine units of government, intelligence, military agents, cooperations such as AIL, ITT, as well as certain divisions of the Brookhaven Labs and other groups from the 1950s up to the present times. These activities are, by all indications, currently ongoing at fully verified and documented subterranean faculty beneath the properly abandoned and delicate Montauk Air Force Station. The radio station is at the extreme east end tip of the Long Island, New York South Park. The remains of the surface military installation are indeed in severe despair, but the underground continues to be active. Lucratively enough, the surface of the land is now a New York State park, on paper at least. However, by terms of the deed, the federal government still retains all rights to any and all property beneath the surface, Investigations reveal that several new, deeper levels have been added to the early 1990s. Fields of research conducted there are said to include ciphertronics, interfacing mind and machine, particle beams, electromagnetic mind control, black hole simulations and interdimensions time travel experiments, warping time and space. Very strong evidence indicates particle accelerators are in use there and are near and at nearby faculties such as Brookhaven Labs for powering particle beam weapons, HARP transmissions, and exotic particle beam radar systems. Oh boy. I've put together the report based on personal interviews with project participants, on-site investigations at Montauk Air Force Station, Camp Hero, and extensive historical and background research. This report verifies without doubt current clandestine activities at the underground installation as well as other locations mentioned. It includes cooperative testimony from area residents and visitors who have very recently have frightening encounters of this location with mysterious, threatening, identifying security personnel taunting automatic weapons. Okay. To get things started on the right note and put the reader in the proper frame of mind, the question should be answered forthwith as simply and directly as possible. The answer is no, but yes. And here is the story. Within the past 2 years, several incidences of deeply disturbing and highly irregular nature have occurred at a near Camp Hero Montauk Air Force Station. Montauk Historical Lighthouse. This area is currently administered by the New York State Park System, and in fact, a designated state park on paper at least. Two of these incidents involve women, one of whom was accompanied by her child, being accosted, harassed, and threatened at gunpoint by an unidentified government military personnel while in the vicinity. They were told they had violated top secret restriction area and were subject to arrest. However, no arrest was made. Another such incident involved weapons happened within the past year when a young man was walking in the so-called state park. A similar event sans automatic weapons took place in mid-April of 95 when a family walking there encountered a security agent, also unidentified, who abusively harassed the family and threatened to have them arrested for the same alleged violations. Again, no arrest was made. In April of 96, in the effort to bring themselves up to date on the status of the area, this family again entered the restricted portion of Camp Hero State Park, and they were once more approached by a non-uniformed guard who advised them that they were intruding into an area designated off-limit to the public and were to leave immediately. This follows upon an expected large number of similar events within recent years. There is much well-substantiated testimony extending back at least 25 years of bizarre, horrific activities secretly conducted by the shadowy government and the military agents at this location. In addition to the known military base, U.S. Army Camp Hero and Montauk Air Force Station, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers plans and records established conclusive proof of the existence of at least 4 levels of subterranean faculties beneath Camp Hero, and according to information sources, upon the additional levels have been added as recently as early as 1990. Montauk is actually a geographical distinct from the rest of Long Island and is the top of an undersea mountain, so there is plenty of bedrock to go down into. Camp Hero was a U.S. Army installation established prior to World War II, and Montauk Air Force Station was established within a perimeter to the Army phased out of the phased out in 1950. The Air Force Station was officially active only until 1969, and the federal records do show that no legitimate source of funding existed past that time to keep the base in operation, as it is SAG radar system had by then become obsolete. Yet recovered Air Force documents and numerous witnesses verify indisputably that the Air Force Station was still active long after then. Recently, much evidence has surfaced indicating that the base and the subterranean faculties were and still are used for a tremendous amount of top secret, ultra classified research and experimentation, much of which falls under the umbrella of the code name Phoenix Project. And quantum and practical particle physics, black hole simulation, super powerful electrical fields, weather control, interfacing mind and machine, genetics, particle beams, technology, and electrical and drug-based mind control. The preponderance of this evidence strongly suggests that a great many of these activities have been thoroughly malevolent as to both their desire ends and the means used to achieve those ends, and have utilized unwitting and even helpless subjects, including at times youngsters abducted from surrounding communities. Certain of these experiments in controlled warping of time and space continuum have such devastating results and almost inconceivable, awesome potential consequences that several project insiders conspired to sabotage the proceeding in 1983, forcing the base's total, but as it turns out, only a temporary abandonment. I believe this is when the two of the scientists went to take it down because things were going too far and they were scared that it was going to really explode. So I think they sabotaged the building. And and you'll see that in the video that I will leave. They explain this. Okay, there's a lot of information here, but I just want to break this up here a little bit. Okay, again, they're talking, okay. Some of the most startling information now available regarding such highly classified research and experimentation in ultra-advanced physics technologies and the use to which such were put can be found in the Montauk Project book series by Preston Nicholas and Peter Moon, which provide extensive detail on recent activities of the Phoenix Project following the Philadelphia experiment in 1943 and early attempt at this death, radar invisibility, and according to some sources, literal invisibility as well, which by most accounts ended in uncontrollable, nightmarish failure. Such interdimensional research was put on hold while an A-bomb was being developed. Okay, In regard to the war against Nazi Germany, however, the outward was not as clear-cut and decisive as the history books might have one believe. Certainly no atomic bombs were dropped, and we shall find out more about this further on. Okay. In the late 1940s, realizing the Phoenix Project lines of research, if properly harnessed, controlled, and developed, and had astonishing and undreamed of possibilities, clandestine governments agencies reopened Pandora's box. The worst problems encountered during the Philadelphia experiment were the extraordinary, disruptive, and bizarre effect on the human beings who were aboard the battleship used in the experiment. The ship and the crew alleged disappeared from sight for some time. Devastating physiological damage, as well as horrifying physical results, such as soldiers being embedded in the metal of the ship when it did rematerialized. Reportedly, some of these effects. Janus von Hamilton, who was the director of the Philadelphia experiment, stating on after Tesla had quit in disgust over his concern about just such effects upon people, was called upon to find out more regarding how human beings were impacted by entering other time-space dimensions, and to develop technology which could allow people to do so without severe damage. Von, who unlike Tesla had little use, soon found himself Von soon found himself unable to avoid coming to terms with both the physics and the spiritual aspects of human beings, in addition to the material or the physical level. Suffice to say that some element of a person, often called a spirit or soul, must remain in sync with his or her original time-space lock, which begins at the time of the physical conception, incarnation, while transferring to or returning from other dimensions. In such wide-scale destructive results are to be avoided. Von, exercising once again the mental abilities, came up with the world's first electronic computer, which had the capability to calculate certain time-space referencing factors with absolute precision, a necessity for what was to be accomplished. In addition, philostronic equipment was created which could receive, reconfigure, and transmit radio-type frequencies generated by thoughts from the human mind, frequencies which do exist and can be picked up by what are commonly called physics or psychics. No, they're not all phony. And by extension, devices which could extend internally and artificially alter or control people's minds. What is that? Okay. Reconfigure and transmit radio type frequencies generated by thoughts from the human mind, frequencies which do exist and can be picked up by what are commonly called physics. No, they're not all phony. And by extension, devices which could externally and artificially alter or control people's mind. Okay. All right. The so-called Montauk project specifically dealt for the most part with the physicotronic and interdimensional areas of experimentations. Electronic magnetic mind control experiments using high-powered radio frequency transmissions were conducted continually upon visiting servicemen and women invited to the base for RR, upon the population at large in surrounding communities, and most incredibly, upon numerous abducted children. There are definitely indications and testimonies that the Montauk Point military faculties were the site of the physical and mind control research even before 1969. According to the research camp, Hero had been known as the psych base ever since its inception, not long after the federal government acquired the land in 1910 through outright trickery, fraud, and deception practiced against its rightful owners, the Montauk Indian tribe. The Church Senate Committee hearing during the 1970s into the practices of the CIA, NSA, and the like in such matters really only scratched the surface of a sordid, brutal, and little-known aspect of the U.S. intelligence services record in this type of experimentation, almost always involving complete object abuse of and discard for constitutional, civil, and human rights. In 1994, the Senate Committee on the Veterans Affairs held hearings into practices of military and intelligence group regarding their use of unwitting, unsuspecting subjects in a substantial portion of the so-called research done in the field, such as testing the effects of chemical biological weapons and the use of drugs and configured EMRF transmissions in mind and body control. At Monarch, to simplify considerably, the basic research agenda was as follows: extremely gifted and righteously trained psychics were hooked up via, there's that word again, psychotronic equipment to computers which converted the waveforms of their thoughts to digital computer code and also relayed the waveforms to especially high-powered EMRF transmitters which broadcast through mind and conscience, altering signals. According to accounts, certain experiments achieved materialization at varying levels of stability and solidity of objects visualized by the psychics whose thoughts were then broadcast, as well as teleportation effects. IBM website is currently displayed a blurb about their research and extended development. Okay, I don't know about that. All right. So I'm just gonna leave it here, and I'm just gonna go for the testimony here and the update of what's going on here now with the King of England. So I'll put this in the description box. There's just a lot here. A lot. Okay, so here, I just wanted to go over this one more time. To simplify once more, the psychics were, again, utilized to visualize and stabilize target destination in a different time-space dimension, which the vortex would then be focused upon. Okay, so then what I'm going to say here today is, it was very disturbing. It happened a month ago. So, you see, this is all really making sense to me now, and what's going on with this video and that video and what's being put out, and, you know, trying to raise people's frequencies, you know, that sort of thing. So I get it now, you know, I get it. Yeah. I mean, right away, you know, the Mohawk, come on, you know that I'm already doing something, and I'm looking into the Mohawk institution and what happened to the Mohawk people. I mean, you know I'm working on this, right? Elizabeth Taylor, right away. Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson, they were very tight. Very, very tight. So I looked into this headband thing, and I went back to Elizabeth Taylor, and I punched in, you know, Elizabeth Taylor with a headband. And this is what I got, right this here. And it says, forget. And it wrote, forget her famous raven locks. You know, Taylor covered it up with a pearl-encrusted headdress for a ball in 1977. Now, I know something happened in 1977, but it escapes me. It really does. So anyway, here, like I say, I'm starting to get and understand what you guys are doing here. And here we have Annie. I couldn't care less the band or anything else. The fact that this is all coming up at the same time that I'm giving testimony, and it's about Anne, my mother-in-law, Cree, talking about her people and the crimes that were committed towards the children, the murder that was allowed. All these children. And this pops up. So I thought, you know, here we are, you know, Shock the Monkey, and the guy looking, no, he's not possessed. No, he's just crazy. Like, you know, MK Ultra, right, looking at you, you know. Michael Jackson, his monkey, the bubble, I think it's Bubbles or something. But yeah, this was Elizabeth Taylor, the mole, everything's there. So I thought, you know what, this is probably the right time to come out with it. Last month, I received an unexpected visit. It was very much like what happened with Anne. Anne came to me a couple of days before she passed, and it was in a dream where I'm walking towards her, and I'm looking at her, and I feel like there's something wrong, because I say to her, Anne, you don't belong here, because she's sitting in my mother's kitchen. And I believe that it was her will that was so strong. See, we never spoke after I had separated with the girl's father. We never spoke. And so I believe that what happened in that kitchen that day had a big part in her coming to me to let me know. Well, last month, I received an unexpected visit, and it was Jonathan Kleck. Jonathan Kleck came in, we sat at the table, he was with somebody, like another presence or something, I don't know, he was talking to somebody. He never spoke to me once, nor did he look at me, but he spoke to whoever it was that he was with. And we were sitting at the table, and I was on the right side of him, and whoever he was with was on the left-hand side. And I remember taking my hand and I went to reach for his arm, and he pulled away from me, like he jerked his arm away from me. And then he got up from the table, and him, whoever that person was that was with him, they got up and they walked down a hallway, because I watched you leave. I watched you leave. And they're walking down a hallway, and Jonathan makes a real sharp turn, like he turns left, and he's gone, like he's out the door, he's through the portal, whatever. I just remember standing there watching him. What was that about? Really, what was that? What was that about? Because you weren't talking to me, you were constantly talking to whoever it was that was there. So I watched you leave, and I remember hearing you say, and I didn't see you at this point, but I heard you, and I heard you say, "She knows." Okay, I'm going to bring you an update. Tamara, I don't know, you probably know this already, and it's actually old news, but I'm just finding it now. And when I was looking into the the schools, residential schools, it had come up. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on what's going on in Saskatchewan. But let me see.
In a place called Melfort, Saskatchewan. And these are the people who suffered for it. 10 Cree people killed to get diamonds for a company called Rio Tinto, linked with the British Crown. From left to right at the top, Thomas Burns, Carol Burns, Gregory Burns, Lydia Gloria Burns, and Bonnie Goodvoice Burns. Bottom left to right, Lana Head, Christian Head, Robert Sanderson, Wesley Peterson, and Earl Burns Sr. The dateline, September 2022 to now. The location, the James Smith Cree Reservation near Melfort, Saskatchewan. Well, once upon a time, not too long ago, billions of dollars of diamonds were discovered under the homes of some Cree Indians in central Canada. But for some reason, the Cree didn't want their land torn apart by the Rio Tinto Mining Company, so their chiefs promptly told Rio Tinto to kiss their collective brown ass. At least they did at first. Then suddenly the Cree chiefs found themselves the recipients of oodles of cash, new cars, and first-class luxury trips to Las Vegas and Hawaii, courtesy of, you guessed it, the Rio Tinto Mining Company and its shareholders in the British Crown. Naturally, the Cree chiefs saw the light after that, and they all said yes to the destruction of their land. All of them did, except one. One man, he held out. His name is Chief Wally Burns, and he still said no to the bribes and to the mining. Well, the next thing Wally knew, 6 of his local Burns relatives were all murdered in one night, along with 4 other Cree. And then Wally dutifully fell in line with the other chiefs, and he withdrew his opposition to the mining. He was then rewarded with a higher position in the James Smith Band Council. But then some even stranger things started happening there at the James Smith Cree Reservation in eastern Saskatchewan. The 3 top Crown officials, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Governor General Mary Simon, Anglican Archbishop Justin Welby, they quickly showed up at the obscure reservation. After dispensing the standard crocodile tears to the bereaved families of the victims, the 3 of them then doled out even more money to the chiefs, over $43 million. And the next day, lo and behold, some atypically efficient Mounties announced that they had caught the killer of the dead Cree Indians, a lone drifter and cocaine addict in very poor health named Miles Sanderson. Well, before anyone could say payoffs and cover-up, Miles quickly and conveniently died while in RCMP custody, like a latter-day Lee Harvey Oswald. And guess what? So did his alleged accomplice, his brother Damon, who was found dead the next day in a field. C'est l'absurde, n'est-ce pas? But it gets even worse, boys and girls. For guess who arrived next at the James Smith Cree Reservation? The one and only Clive Weekhill, the notorious ex-police chief of Saskatoon, who for years concealed the routine murder of Cree Indians by his city cops. But now Clive wore a new hat, that of the Crown Coroner, summoned to investigate the deaths of more murdered Cree. Well, you can guess what happened next. With the banal predictability of yet another stage-managed whitewash in which Canada excels, Clive and his Mountie buddies soon declared that Miles Sanderson was the lone killer. But they didn't bother to explain his motives or how he adeptly entered 7 separate homes in one night and murdered 10 people while in a sickly condition and armed only with a knife. They also claimed that Miles had wounded 18 other Cree people with the same knife. Not bad for a feeble cocaine addict, eh? Well, to back up this absurd, unproven scenario, Clive Weehill quickly convened a hand-picked coroner's jury, illegally stacked with only the right kind of natives, local band councillors and their friends, all of them on the government payroll. Naturally, the jury's pre-arranged verdict rubber-stamped the fairy tale issued by Clive Weehill and his Mountie minions. The so-called Canadian media lapped up and regurgitated all this garbage and castigated the deceased Miles Sanderson as a heinous mass murderer, even though that had never been proven in a court of law. As with the Indian residential schools genocide, none of the reporters bothered to ask any obvious questions, like why Trudeau, Simon and Welby and the Rio Tinto business associates doled out millions of bucks to the local chiefs, or why a media blackout was then imposed on everything right after Clive Weekhill's farcical pronouncement and jury stacking. Well, things went quiet after that for about a year, as the corporate wheels turned behind the expensive government smokescreen. To distance itself from its odious actions, Rio Tinto Company handed over its James Smith project to one of its affiliates, a company called Star Diamond, which is closely linked with the Chinese and their investors. Star Diamond then announced it would commence mining this month by March 2024 at the James Smith Cree site, calling it, quote, the world's largest undeveloped diamond mine. No wonder people had to die, huh? And so right on cue, early in January 2024, the feds and the RCMP began stage-managed public hearings into the James Smith massacre to make it seem that everything was all above board and peachy clean. Just like they did with equal duplicity in their infamous Truth and Reconciliation Commission that exonerated and decriminalized the church-led genocide of over 60,000 Indigenous children. And finally, during that same month of January 2024, the coroner and killer cop, Clive Weehill, announced his official retirement. Out of sight, out of mind. But truth finds a way to seep through the cracks of even the most thorough criminal conspiracy, even in Canada. During 2023, evidence surfaced that King Charles himself was implicated in the James Smith Cree murders, a revelation that's been one of the factors that sparked his likely abdication behind an official cover story that he's sick with cancer. Well, he's a sick man, all right, but not because of cancer. Charles Mountbatten Windsor likes to order the killing of Canadian Indians, especially those who threaten his Rio Tinto business interests and the image of his family. Just ask Major Johnny Thompson, Charles's top security advisor, at least he was until recently when he started spilling the beans about his boss to his colleagues. Last fall, one of them gave his testimony to a citizens' tribunal in Vancouver, the West Coast Common Law Court of Justice. The court was convened on September 20th, 2023, to investigate the murder of Native activists in our movement, the movement to expose and prosecute Canada's homegrown genocide. Well, one of the activists killed was my friend William Coombs, and he was killed in St. Paul's Hospital on February 26, 2011, right after he went public with his eyewitness account of Queen Elizabeth and Philip abducting forever 10 children from the Kamloops death camp run by the Catholic Church back in October 1994. And of course, turns out Charles was responsible for the kill order against William as well, as was proven, uncontested in the common law court. According to the affidavit of Major Thompson's colleague who shared his remarks, a veteran member of the British Monarchy Security Force said, quote, "In late December of 2010, I participated in a special operations meeting in Buckinghamshire. This meeting was called by Major Johnny Thompson, the King's chief security advisor, at the time Prince Charles's security advisor. Major Thompson told us he was appearing on behalf of Prince Charles, who had ordered him to arrange the elimination of a foreign assassin threatening the royal family. I was surprised when the target was a Canadian Red Indian, since normally the RCMP have jurisdiction over such operations. When I raised this with Major Thompson, he said, 'The Mounties will handle this one on the ground. We're just setting the wheels in motion. This is a royal directive.' Well, I learned later that in early February 2011, Canada's RCMP Commissioner, Mr. Elliott, dispatched operatives to Vancouver to deal with the target in accordance with Prince Charles's order. I also learned later that the Indian they eliminated was a Mr. William Coombs, who as a homeless man seemed to be an unlikely terrorist. The whole affair troubled Major Thompson, who began to confide to us other disturbing actions by Prince Charles. Later, when we read Mr. Coombs' statement about his witnessing of the Queen's abduction of those children, some of us began to question our allegiances," unquote. Well, after this revelation was made public in the court's November 20th verdict that found Charles and others guilty of crimes against humanity, another source in England came forward with new evidence. It indicated that Charles had arranged the James Smith Cree killings in September 2022 to safeguard the Rio Tinto Star Diamond operation in which he had personal investments. Well, not coincidentally, the Cree killings took place just 4 days before Queen Elizabeth died, and Charles assumed the throne, inheriting Elizabeth's sizable personal fortune in Rio Tinto. Clearly, Charles wanted to safeguard his investment and all that money, and he did so with the help of the Church of England in the person of its top cleric, Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby, who quickly appeared at the scene of the crime in James Smith Cree Reservation. Now, of course, that's the same Justin Welby who was convicted by a common law court in 2014 for having arranged the destruction of documents and children's graves at his church's deadly Mohawk Indian Residential School in Brantford, Ontario. In a repeat performance, Archbishop Welby disposed of the remains of the murdered Cree Indians in Saskatchewan by having them buried in the local Anglican cemetery, safe and tucked away in case any honest forensic examiners started poking around. Apparently, Justin Welby was also the bagman of the $43 million payoff to the James Smith Cree chiefs. The James Smith Cree massacre is yet another Canadian tragedy.
Well, I'm going to shut this down. It's really late. I've been working on this study, and again, when I saw this video about this person going over to your channel, Jonathan Clark, all I could do was just shake my head after what you did with me. You trespassed. You crossed a boundary that should not be crossed. This is definitely getting deep. So tell me, Jonathan Clark, what was your purpose? What was that conversation you were having? I'd like an answer to that. And by the way, I found out when I was looking into the Montauk project, guess who I found there? Aleister Crowley, 1919. Unbelievable. All of this is coming together. So I'm going to say goodnight. I am really, really, really tired. So I hope this video turns out, like I said, it's pretty long. It's the longest video that I've done. So we'll see what happens. I have another video right now on getting ready. I'm almost finished it. So I will say goodnight. No fear, be love, and give hope. And Tamara, there's so much more, that could be said. But I'm going to say it again. It is a true miracle that we are standing today. Thank you again for looking my way. Thank you, Jesus.